Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Kelly here with Esri, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today. So today we're going to be discussing what's new in ArcGIS Maritime, and with that I'll go ahead and turn over to our presenter today, Craig Green.
Thanks, Kelly. Good morning, everyone from Southern California. As Kelly mentioned, my name is Craig Green, and I work on the Maritime team at Esri, and I'll be presenting an update on what's new, so things that we've done in the last half of 2019, and the things that we've released in the first half of this year, of 2020. And we will also be covering a little bit of what's coming for ArcGIS Maritime in the second half of this year. I want to note up front that any applications that I show in the presentation or during the demo are available to the public, and I'll share the links to these things at the end. Also, for poll questions, we'll ask a couple of those, and I appreciate your participation in advance. So what we'll be talking about today is what's new in desktop in ArcGIS Pro. So we'll cover S100, where we're at with S100, and also our migration of S57 electronic navigational chart, inland chart, AML, electronic chart production in ArcGIS Pro from ArcMap. So that was previously only available in ArcMap, and we're moving that to ArcGIS Pro. So we'll talk a little bit about that S57 migration. We'll also talk about what's new in ArcGIS Server from both the Maritime Chart Service, the ability to publish maritime data as OGC web map or REST map services. We'll provide an update on our web-based chart production system or products on demand that we're developing to support the deprecation of traditional paper charts in the desktop. We'll also provide some updates on how we're supporting mission-specific fit-for-purpose charts with this web application. I'll also briefly touch on some recent work we've done leveraging machine learning and AI to automate some maritime workflows. And then lastly, I'll touch on other parts of the platform, of the Esri platform, in addition to ArcGIS Maritime, that you can leverage to support your marine spatial data infrastructure. So before I get into the presentation, I guess we'll ask our first poll question here. And this poll question really will help me kind of understand who my audience is. So if you can take a minute here to, the poll should be open. And if you could take a minute there and respond to the poll question, I would appreciate that. Great, we've got some responses coming in. So looks like we've got about 25% of you are data or information scientists. Another 25% are responding to other, so something I didn't capture in the options here. 30% of you are either a hydrographer or a cartographer, so split right down the middle. And then we've got about 20% of you are managers or executives. So thanks a lot. Wide variety of roles within your organization. All right, so let's get into ArcGIS Maritime in the desktop. So some of you may not be familiar with this product, so I wanted to provide just a real quick overview of what it is before we get into what's new, in case you're not familiar with this product. It is a data-first solution, so definitely not a paper or even really an ENC-first solution, although the attributes are of course structured around the S57 or the S100 standard. But it really is a data-first solution. It's all about the data. It supports a wide variety of international maritime standards, so vector standards like ENC, inland ENC, AML, additional military layers, or VPF, the vector product format for DNC and TOD. We support paper standards like S4 or INT2, or INT1 rather, and INT2. We support the latest versions of the IHO S58 validation standards. This product is available both in ArcMap and in ArcGIS Pro, but one distinction I want to make is that in ArcGIS Pro, there is no support in ArcMap for S100. That is only in ArcGIS Pro. So S57 is both in, and S57 and S100 are both in ArcGIS Pro, and S57 is in ArcMap, but no S100 in ArcMap, and we currently have no plans of putting S57 in ArcMap. S100 in ArcMap. Another key aspect of this product is the ability to automate workflows. Almost all of the tools are geoprocessing tools, and I'll mention a little bit more later about geoprocessing tools in case you're not familiar with those. But they're essentially tools that can be automated. So the first thing I want to provide an update on is our S100 support. This is built on geoprocessing tools, which can be run as a standalone tool in the desktop application, just like any tool can be run in desktop, but can also be strung together in models using Model Builder. So if you're familiar with that, it provides a simple graphical user interface that allows you to drag and drop geoprocessing tools into a form, and you can string them together. Those can even be exported as Python scripts. You can also write your own Python directly against these geoprocessing tools and create custom Python scripts and custom Python script tools. Geoprocessing tools can also be run as scheduled tasks. So every night at 2300 hours, for example, they can be called completely outside of the application. So you don't even have to open the application. You can just run these tools. They can also be published as a service and run through a widget in a web application. These tools also leverage the S100 feature catalogs directly when building the geodatabase schema from the feature catalog. So they essentially read the feature catalog and build the geodatabase schema directly from it. So our support for S100 is meant to be sort of, I don't want to use the word generic, but broad, and we are simply have built tools that just read these feature catalogs and build schemas directly from them. So if a feature catalog is built and it's built correctly, we can build a geodatabase from it. So something else that we've done in ArcGIS Pro 2.5, so this was released at the FedGIS this year, so in February, was some new tools designed to support S100 feature creation and editing. One of these is the S100 Association Manager that you see on the left there, and it allows you to easily create and manage feature and information associations. So if you're not that familiar with S100, think of that like in ArcMap, what we call the Relationship Manager, which was used to manage sort of structure and equipment relationships or collections and things like that. And then the other user interface tool that we've introduced at 2.5 is the S100 Attribute Editor, and it allows you to create and manage complex attributes and their sub-attributes in an intuitive attribute editing window, which is integrated directly with ArcGIS Pro. And so if you're familiar with our ArcMap implementation, you know that we had additional user interfaces that you would use instead of using sometimes the core ones. Well, now in ArcGIS Pro, we're integrated directly with all of the core user interfaces, so there's no need to learn a second set of UIs anymore. This work also further integrates us with the feature catalog in that we're actually leveraging the S100 feature catalogs directly during runtime. So you get things like attribute validation directly from the feature catalog during runtime. So if there's a feature that has to have a certain multiplicity of attributes, and you haven't filled it out properly, you'll get a little red tab next to the attribute noting that you need to fill it out. And once you've properly attributed it, it turns green. Additionally, we get tooltips that tell you about the features and the attributes directly from the feature catalog. So if you put your cursor over an attribute, you'll get a tooltip that's pulled from the S100 feature catalogs. And lastly, we've introduced a maritime ribbon in ArcGIS Pro, and this is like other ArcGIS Pro ribbons and tools, is context sensitive. So when you have maritime data in your contents pane, this ribbon will appear and provide you access to these particular tools. So as I mentioned earlier, we are also migrating our S57 support to ArcGIS Pro from ArcMap. Initially, we were only focusing on S100 in Pro, but many of our customers believe that they're going to be producing S57 for a decade, 10 years or more even, and they don't want to wait to move to Pro. So as a result, we've decided to migrate these capabilities to Pro. We're doing this in 3 phases. The first phase, which you see here, was migrating all the geoprocessing tools over. So with the latest release of ArcGIS Pro 2.6, you'll have all of the S57 geoprocessing tools available to you. We also created a migration script. So if you're a current ArcMap user and you already have a production system stood up, this script will allow you to migrate your products. So essentially, if you're familiar with ArcMap, there's no longer a product library in ArcGIS Pro. This script will migrate all of the metadata, all of the product footprints, and all that other information that was once stored in the product library to the central database. So you'll still have the same information available to you, but instead of having 2 separate systems, one called the product library and one called the NIS, which was where all the data lived, it's now all stored in one database. So this migration script, it adds a couple of new tables where all this information is moved to. Another key enhancement that you see highlighted here in red is the addition of a new parameter in our geoprocessing tools for a configuration file. And what this allows you to do is create custom mappings from the GIS to S57. We also provide the support for S100 as well, because all of our mapping is essentially done with an XML file that's human readable, and you can modify this XML if you want to. So you could create multiple XML files with multiple mappings, and it makes it a lot easier to extract specific themes of information from the central database in ArcGIS Pro than it was in ArcMap. And then phase 2, which we're currently working on and will be released in Q1 of 2021, is all of the user interface tools. So the tools that you need to use if you're going to be sort of curating and managing and creating the official electronic navigational products. If you're just using tools for scripting, at the current release, you should be able to use ArcGIS Pro. But again, if you're curating the data, you're creating sort of structure and equipment relationships, and you're responsible for managing these products, then the next release, phase 2, will be where you'll be able to migrate to ArcGIS Pro. A couple of the interfaces that we're working on there are, we're migrating the relationship manager, and this is the interface that allows you to manage S57 feature relationships, so structure and equipment relationships or collections. It allows you to explore existing relationships or create new ones. It also enforces encoding rules in the relationships so that it only allows you to create structure and equipment relationships between appropriate features. Additionally, we've much like our support for S100, we've integrated with the attribute editing pane. So now in S57, we'll just use the core attribute editing window. And so this will support things like the list fields and mandatory attribute validation. Additionally, we'll be providing some symbology, as you see here, at this release as well. So we'll provide a couple of different layer files that allow you to visualize your geodatabase in either int1 or in S52. So I guess before we get started with that's essentially what's new in ArcGIS Desktop. And then before we get started with ArcGIS Maritime Server, we have a second, and this is our final poll question here, where we'll be asking you what types of functionality you'd like to see in your marine SDI. So the poll is open if you don't mind taking a look at that and answering that. Great, we've got some responses coming in. Looks like mostly people are interested in bathymetric data services, with about 40% of the responses there. We have about 25% of the responses for electronic navigational data as a service, and then web analysis tools and data sharing and distribution are next, and then production and operation dashboards last with less than 10%. So thanks again. Looks like bathymetric data services is of most interest to you, and the electronic navigational data as a service is second. So as I did for our desktop product, for those of you who aren't familiar with our server capabilities, I'll give you a quick overview of what we have there today. We have a product called ArcGIS Maritime Server. It allows you to disseminate or publish S57 AML, ENC, inland ENC as WMS and REST OGC services, or WMTS. Provides ECDIS-like symbology and ECDIS-like controls. And we also have a second product called Products on Demand, which allows you to create custom chart-like products via a web application. So to quickly define the Maritime Chart Service, it is an extension to ArcGIS Server. And as I mentioned, it has two features, and the first one I'll be talking about here is the Maritime Chart Service. The main capabilities of this are the ability to publish S57 or even encrypted S63 as OGC map services, like, as I mentioned, WMS, WMTS, so tiled services, and RESTful services. It uses S57 data directly, so the data is not processed into a geodatabase first. So it's essentially plug and play with your ENC data. You just take your ENC data, throw it into a folder, and this application reads them and renders them in a web application. It provides some ECDIS-like functionality, so you can change things like the color scheme to day or dusk or night. You can turn groups and features on and off. You can change the safety contour. You can identify features and get the pick report. So it's essentially like a desktop ECDIS in a way. And because it leverages S57 directly, updating it with updates or new additions is pretty seamless. The second this is actually, here's a quick example of one of these Maritime Chart Service implementation. So this is the United Kingdom Hydrographic Offices, or UKHO's online Admiralty Vector Chart Service. It is just an implementation of ArcGIS Maritime. It provides an ECDIS-like experience to their customers as a service, and it's used for activities like shore-based mission planning. And this is actually their YouTube advertisement, so you can go Google the UKHO Online Admiralty Vector Chart Service or search for it on YouTube and find out more information about that. The second capability in our server product is Products on Demand. This actually leverages that Maritime Chart Service in the background. So you publish your S57 as a service, this consumes that, and then it allows you to create geographic or georeferenced PDFs directly from the S57 data. You can create it on any size sheet of paper, any scale, anywhere, and it's built from the latest S57. So your charts, your paper charts, are always up to date. Again, there's no geodatabase for the data. It's just S57. The basic symbology is S52. But we do allow customizations. It has a JavaScript front end and Python in the background that automates a lot of the processes. It has the configuration to all of this is customizable, so you can customize your grids, your int2 grids and graticules. You can customize your map document templates, and all the explanatory notes or the marginalia that goes around the chart can be customized. And it can even be customized dynamically, so that when the user creates a chart, information is applied to it at the time the map is requested. So an example of this is the NOAA custom chart application, which is NOAA's implementation of ArcGIS Maritime's product on demand capabilities. And the factors that are driving NOAA to look at alternative solutions for paper are common to all hydrographic offices. In the Future of Paper Chart document published by the IHO's Nautical Chart Working Group, it shows that the adoption of electronic charts is increasing dramatically, while the use of paper charts is decreasing. And I think, as we all know, paper charts are significantly more time-consuming and expensive to maintain. And because of that, often the currency, or how current these products are, tends to lag behind the electronic charts in many cases. And if you want to learn more about what NOAA is doing here, why they're making this decision to essentially sunset their traditional paper charts and how they're doing it. They have a document that you can read called the Sunsetting Traditional NOAA Paper Charts. There's also an article in the latest Arc News about this that interviews some folks from CHS in Canada and NOAA as well. So in February of this year, with the release of 10.8, we introduced the ability to customize the content of your product on demand chart. And we did this through this new add data functionality. So you can add data from ArcGIS Online. You can sign into your own organizational account. You can even add data from disk to the web map. This allows you to mash up your electronic chart data with other content to create sort of non-standard fit for purpose or mission purpose charts. And in some of the images here, you'll see that I'm just mashing this up with it's NOAA electronic chart data, it's bathymetric data services, it's topographic data services that you can put all together to make custom mission specific charts. And it also might be important to mention that earlier I mentioned that there's templates in the background, there's map documents in the background that you can customize that drive these outputs. At 10.8, we moved away from ArcMap, and so the templates that are in the background are now ArcGIS Pro. So that's just a note for those of you who might be moving from 10.7 to 10.8, that these documents will have to be upgraded. So something else that we've done here as in addition to mashups is that customers are also looking to leverage products on demand to replace their traditional desktop paper chart production. And this had required a few key enhancements. One of those was the ability to replace the ENC symbology, which is really designed for screen display, with custom symbols. And these custom symbols are actually built on SVG or scalable vector graphics. And how we're building them is aligned with the S100 specification. We say custom here because you can do whatever you want with them, but really what we're building in COTS and delivering with our COTS software, off-the-shelf software, is int1 or S4, however you want to refer to it, symbology. So we'll be providing that out of the box, but know that you can customize your own symbols. The underlying code, the functionality that's there already supports custom line and fill patterns as well, but at the 10.8.1 release, which is the release that's just out, we've only built support for the int1 point symbols, as you can see in the image here, and I've circled one of them so that you can note how this is more sort of advanced, I suppose, than S52 symbology. And we will also be sharing these symbols with the IHO's Nautical Chart Working Group at the upcoming NCWG conference in Cadiz. Of course, we won't be there physically, so we'll just be virtually handing them off to the working group at that time. Another thing that people needed to be able to sunset their traditional paper charts and move to products on demand was the zones of confidence diagram. And this is also available now with the release of 10.8.1. And as you can see here, we went with colors to show the ZOC zones instead of using the traditional A1 through U designations. And this is because the idea with products on demand is to completely automate the entire workflow. And if you have text in there, a lot of times these areas are so small that a cartographer ends up having to move the text somewhere so that it can, it's legible or readable. And using color instead of text eliminates that. Now, these colors are, of course, configurable like everything else. There's no agreement right now with the NCWG or the IHO on what colors would be used if we're going to replace these textual designations with color. However, that is something that has been brought up at the NCWG. And so whatever they decide, whether it's a color fill pattern or dashed or hatch patterns, we can accommodate that as well. And lastly, we're also implementing support for custom text strings. So you'll be able to leverage your own fonts or multiple fonts with any custom labeling, font styles, colors, all those things. And you can see in the example here, we've gone a little overboard just to illustrate this and made these blue, green, and red labels. But these are more int1-like labels than are allowed in S52. So this will also be introduced, and this should be in Q1 of 2021. So at that point, you'll be able to have full int1 point symbology, full int1 line and fill symbology, and also int1 labels. You'll have ZOC diagrams, and we already support explanatory notes. So now I'm going to provide a quick demo of the new mashup capabilities that are in our products on demand application. So as I mentioned, you don't need to copy this down. I'll provide this link at the end, and all these applications are available to all of you. We're going to use this products on demand app here to do the demo. In this case, we're going to pretend that we have a mission around Fox Island in Puget Sound in Washington State on the west coast of the United States. And my mission spans sea and land. And as the Navy, I have the latest electronic navigational chart data, of course. But the land content here is really not sufficient for the land-based part of my mission. So what I can do now is I can go here and I can add data. So I can add the latest USGS topo data. And then I can go to my list of layers and I can move my nautical chart back to the top. But then, since I want to use the land content from the topo service, I'm going to turn off the natural features in my navigational chart data. So now I've added topo content. But also this depth information is outdated, and we have a more recent survey that we've conducted for the purpose of this mission. So I'll go back here and I'm going to add my survey data. And again, I'll go to my layer list and I'll move up my nautical chart information. And this time I'm going to turn off the depths. So now you can see that I have the restricted areas, anchorage areas, any dangers to navigation or navigational aids from my electronic chart data. I have the accurate topographic information on land from my USGS service, and I have the latest survey data added to this map. Now all I have to do is go pick a scale that I want to make this map at, for example, 20,000 perhaps. Pick a page size that I want to put this sheet on, and portrait or landscape, and click insert. And then you can just pick an area over here and insert your chart. And what happens when you go to click insert is it's essentially doing a geoprocessing calculation to determine at 20,000 on an A1 sheet with landscape, how much area of the surface of the earth is that going to cover. Then I can move this AOI around to wherever I want. And then I simply go to my print queue, and you can say I have this chart here. I can give it a custom name if I want, and then click print. It does take, especially if you're adding lots of services to this, it can take 2 or 3 minutes to print. So I've already printed this, and you can see it here. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can get a little bit better view of it. But you can see I have my int2 grids here. I have all my data in my mashup in this PDF. I have things that were updated dynamically, like the standard parallel of the chart, which is calculated to be at the center of the chart when this is run. And then also I have additional pages of all the explanatory notes related to this chart. And this is done through a service in the background that's intersected with your AOI that holds all this explanatory note information in it. So this is essentially an update of the new capabilities that we added to support mission-specific products. So I wanted to touch a little bit here, just very briefly, on some of the things that we've done to apply GeoAI or AI and machine learning to maritime. There's already a webinar that's focused on this exact deep learning exercise, and it's posted on Esri's YouTube channel. So I'll keep this pretty high level. But essentially what we did here was we started with a new survey, and then we leveraged the ArcGIS.learn Python API to detect shipwrecks from the survey data. And there you can see in the screen capture above here, that is the result of this work. And this is actually available through the ArcGIS API for Python. There's a GitHub repo, a repository, that provides you access to the materials, so the data and the Python notebook, so the actual code that we used to accomplish this. We also, though, didn't really stop there. We on the maritime team took this a little bit further, and we took those results and we used some other geoprocessing tools to write those shipwrecks as wreck objects, wreck S57 objects, to our maritime database. And then we exported that as an updated ENC containing the new wrecks. And then we published this S57 as an ENC map service using ArcGIS Maritime. And there is this web map here, which again, this is publicly available. We'll share the link to it at the end, so you can kind of go see the results of this work. And there's in this web map, it has the inputs, so it has the bathymetric data that we analyzed. It has the output of the machine learning. It has the updated S57 data as well. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is in addition to our ArcGIS Maritime server capabilities, which I mentioned allow you to publish S57 electronic charts as services. There are also a variety of other capabilities in the ArcGIS platform, and I'm only going to name a few here, that support other aspects of a broader marine SDI. One of them being ArcGIS dashboards. So you do see a couple. Let me mention this really quick before I continue. These links are they are publicly available, but they are not included in the single link I'll share at the end, which provides you access to all of the other apps that I've shown today. So if you do want to go visit these, you will need to jot these down. This was a really long URL, so I made a tiny URL for it. But essentially, this dashboard you're looking at here, well, dashboards first, what they allow you to do is bring lots of streams of data together to provide a real-time picture of information that might be important to your organization or your organization's stakeholders, for example. And in this example right here, this is from the Port of Rotterdam. And this is bringing together weather information and tidal information in a single intuitive view. Also, you can, as I mentioned earlier, most of the tools in the ArcGIS platform are geoprocessing tools, and they can be published as services. So in this particular dredging analysis demo, what you'll see is someone has done that. They've essentially taken 3D analyst tools and they've built a dredging analysis web application that allows you to digitize over an area and choose a depth that you want to dredge to, and it'll tell you how much volume you need to remove using a 3D surface below it. And then lastly, one of the things I'll touch on here are image or elevation services. And this example I'm showing here, that's the streamed video, is a service of bathymetric attributed grid data, or BAG data, that's been published with its metadata as an image service. And there's also widgets in this app that allow you to query and filter out the specific data sets based on that metadata. And then you can actually download the BAG files that you have filtered to. And this one I do have a link to, which is what at the end. So. As I mentioned, this is kind of the one-stop location for all of these apps that I've shown you. So the GeoAI Shipwreck application is here. The Products on Demand application that I demonstrated for mashups or add data is here. There's a second Products on Demand application as well. And let me just escape out of here and go back to this, and I can kind of show you this here. So here's the bathymetric image service that I was just showing you the streamed video of. Here's the electronic navigational chart service, or the maritime chart service. And then there's additional applications as well. There's another type of products on demand that does not allow you to do mashups. And it's for what we call fixed. So in this is a case where maybe you want to tightly control the outputs that are being generated. And in that case, you don't want to allow people to change the color scheme or add additional data or turn things on and off, because maybe you want it to be fit for navigation or safe for navigation. And therefore, you don't want users playing with the settings. And that's what this application allows you to do. It actually allows you to publish a grid. It doesn't have to be a grid, but of AOIs, or areas of interest. And the user must click on that polygon to generate a chart. And you can't move them around like I showed you in the demonstration. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, there is a questions tab, and you can certainly ask questions there. This is, again, a link to the organizational account where it has all the apps on it. And then this is our GeoNet page. This is where we blog. So that's a good place to get really frequent updates if you're interested in things that are going on. There's also a way there where you can ask questions of us. And then if you want to contact us directly, you have more questions about anything you've seen today, and you don't want to ask it in the chat, you can email us at maritime@esri.com.
All right, thanks, Craig.
So okay.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions if we have time. The first one we have is, will the custom symbology be something available in the NOAA custom chart tool? One complaint I've heard is products still look like an ENC versus a traditional raster product.
Yes, so NOAA is, along with others, are essentially the people that are driving this development. So absolutely, we are working with NOAA on this, and they do intend to update their NOAA custom chart application with paper chart symbology. Now, I can't speak for NOAA. I don't know if they're going to do their US Chart 1 symbology, or if they're going to go with a more IHO Int 1 look. But yes, they do intend to adopt this custom symbology.
Okay, great, thank you. The next question we have, does ArcGIS Maritime Server support S102 datasets?
ArcGIS Maritime Server doesn't, but ArcGIS does. So I've actually already downloaded CHS, the Canadian Hydrographic Office. They published some S102 datasets, and I was able to download those, bring them into ArcGIS Pro, and publish those as a service. So that's just natively supported. And in fact, ArcGIS Maritime, or the Bathymetry product, it really just relies on Esri's GDAL implementation. So anything that's supported under that, that is supported by Esri, and then just by Providence by Maritime as well, because we inherit all of that.
Okay, great, thank you. We have a couple more questions here. So the next one is the possibility to add depth data from ASCII or ASC2 XYZ data format to Maritime Server.
Yes, and there's a variety of ways to answer that question. So that might be something you want to reach out to me at maritime@esri.com, and we can talk further about. But absolutely, it's just that there's, as is always the case, there's probably 12 different roads you can take to get there, and it'll depend on exactly what you're trying to accomplish. But of course, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And next question, What could be the reasons that a chart or a map made with ArcGIS Pro and exported to PDF and then printed on paper looks slightly blurry?
That's a good question. I guess it could be if it's printed, it looks blurry, and if it doesn't look blurry on screen, then that could be the printer. If it's looking blurry on screen, I guess I might need a little clarification on the question.
All right. Yeah, and if whoever put that question in, if you want to go ahead and update in the chat, or like Craig mentioned, if you want to connect on GeoNet or send an email, we might be able to answer that a bit better. So the next question we have here, moving on, what are the plans for migrating the Maritime Bathymetry BIS migrated to ArcGIS Pro?
Yeah, we're actively working on that now. There are some bathymetry capabilities available in Pro today, but we've only migrated some of the discrete tools. So tools that allow you to do sounding, thinning, shallow biased or deep biased, if you prefer, sounding, thinning, and tools that do the automated shallow biased contour generation. Those tools have been migrated to Pro. We are sort of redesigning the bathymetry product in Pro. And again, if you want more information on that, please email me. I'm happy to give it to you. But essentially, we're changing the structure so that it's a little bit more open. And just like we did here, we kind of took the metadata out of these XML columns and exposed them in standard tables, which means that now you can get to them through Python a lot more easily. You can get to them through core tools a lot more easily. That's essentially what we're doing with the bathymetry product as well. But it is migrating to Pro. And you should see more features in Q1 2021.
Perfect, thank you. Next question we have here, can you do a dual product S57 and S101 from the same database?
I'll answer that in a couple ways. One of them is through geoprocessing tools, you can produce both. So we have a converter geoprocessing tool, so you can essentially export from your geodatabase to an S57 file. Then we have a converter tool, a geoprocessing tool that will convert S57 to S101. So you can take that S57 data, you can make an export, you can string these two tools together, in fact, so that a user only has to use one tool and it just automatically generates the S101 file. So you could do it that way. You could generate an S57 and use the geoprocessing tool to convert that S57 to S101. Additionally, as I mentioned, this is all controlled through mapping files. So whatever's in the geodatabase and whatever's in your mapping file, that's what'll go out. So you could build some kind of Uber database that has everything in it and have two different mapping files and map to S57 or S101. We're not doing it that way in Pro. We're keeping these things separate, and partly because we don't want to overcomplicate the interfaces with both things together. We can convert between the two anyway.
Okay, great. And we do have a couple more questions. I believe we have time for one more, so I'll go ahead and address that. Anything we don't get to, reminder, you can always email and contact us at the email you see on the screen there, maritime@esri.com, or connect with our Maritime team via the GeoNet page. So our last question we have for today, Craig, the PL will be inside NIS only for S101 or also for S57 in ArcGIS Pro?
Yes, for both. Yep. So for S57, that migration script, and I probably should have clarified this on that page. Actually, that migration script, it does move the information from the product library to new tables in your S57 NIS, so all that information can move over. But that migration script actually allows you to migrate one product, 10 products, all your products, and you can still continue to have people edit the same NIS using their product library in ArcMap and generate products while you've migrated some of the products to Pro. So you can slowly migrate your products, S57 products to Pro, and slowly migrate your workforce to ArcGIS Pro, and still keep some of those people on ArcMap.
Okay, thank you so much. And it looks like that's all the time we have today for our questions. So once again, I'd like to remind everyone that this presentation has been recorded. So if anybody had any audio issues or missed any part of the presentation, please don't worry. We will be sending out the link to that recording within the next couple days. We also are having the same exact webinar presentation again on Thursday evening if you'd like to register for that if you did miss anything. And once again, if you have any additional questions, I encourage everyone to connect through our Maritime GeoNet page, which is where our maritime community has discussions and hosts blogs. So again, thank you everyone for attending our webinar today, What's New in ArcGIS Maritime. You can always email us too with any additional questions at maritime@esri.com. And with that, I will say thank you, Craig, and thank you for everyone who attended today.
Thanks, everybody.